Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to my new video where we are going to go over my top 5 tips I think every single Quinn player needs to know. Now, if you're new to my channel, my name is LoFit. I do educational content, I do tips videos, guide videos. Also, I stream here on YouTube. My goal behind this video is to make you a better Quinn player and to give you a better understanding of the champion as a whole before the new season comes and you guys start kicking ass and climbing. So, I always put timestamps on my videos. They're going to be at the top of the page if you want to skip this intro. If you want to skip a certain tip, heavily encourage you to do that because I know you guys have so many different choices with league content creators. I try to give you guys the most bang for your buck and the most time for the time that you spend with me. If you want to contact me directly, you can go in the pinned comments down below, and there is going to be a link to my Discord if you want to send me a message directly with any questions, or you can hit that subscribe button and the bell button, and you'll be notified when I go live on my stream, and you can ask me any questions there, and I try my best to help out everyone. Finally, add your own tips down below. I'm a bit limited with this format with the 5 tips. I just love seeing other people looking to help out other Quinn players, as she is a little bit of a niche champion. Not too many people play him. This community is a little bit smaller, and we should encourage and help people that are looking to pick up the champion. Hopefully we get a bigger voice and get Quinn a little bit of buffs, because she is quite a fun champion when she is extremely strong. Alright, let's get into the first tip. Alright, and getting into tip number 1, I want to talk about something that is extremely important on Quinn and really separates the great Quinn players from just the good Quinn players. If you're wondering why my champion is going to be moving around a little bit different, as I've recently figured out something called use movement prediction that really helps with the responsiveness of your champion, particularly if you're like me on the West Coast and you have a little bit of lag. But a lot of pro players do use this, and it does seem like it is a little bit harder to get a hold of how the enemy is moving when they have this selected. I'm going to give you an example of how the Orbwalk looks when I have this on. So as you can see, I'm really just keeping a constant move, even though it seems like I might be jumping around a little bit. This is just a lot harder to predict with the movements, and I'm getting in a lot of auto attacks. Obviously, I'm not going at the max auto attack speed, but this is something you should really be looking to practice when you are playing Quinn, and that is orb walking at a very good clip and keeping on the move. As she is a really low base defensives with less than 2k HP at level 18 and very low armor and magic resist ratings, you really want to take advantage of your range. This is where Quinn really makes or breaks their opponents, is her ability to kite them out, as she is a great top lane bully against champions that are really trying to attack her and close the distance and get on top of her. How you want to be looking to use your abilities of blinding, assault, and vault, or you want to use them as counter punches. You do not want to use them in a situation where you are just going to burn all your cooldowns and then they still have their movement speed, they still have their gap closer up, except for the one situation where the enemy is extremely weak and you can just continually harass them. That it would be a fine time to just really use your abilities as a maximizing damage potential. But say you're against something like a Tryndamere or a Garen. The Tryndamere uses this E-in. That's when you want to use your big gap closer of the vault. If the Garen Q's in, that is when you want to look to use your big gap closer denial of vault. Also, blinding assault is going to be a great ability to really mislead the enemies in ways that I see a lot of Quinn players not really use effectively. A lot of the times they are blinding and they are running the same way that the enemy saw beforehand. But what you can be looking to do with blinding assault is move in a way that is going to be hard for them to guess. You don't want to be predictable. If you are a predictable ADC with your movement, you are going to take a lot of unnecessary deaths that you could have otherwise got if you were having extremely unpredictable movement and staying on the move. So those are my couple of tips for orb walking and how to keep your distance when you are playing Quinn, on top of things like Blade of the Rune King that allow you to get a little bit of a movement speed debuff on the enemy and give yourself a little bit of a movement speed buff. So obviously you would want to be stealing when people have their highest amount of movement speed, so you can get as much movement speed as possible. For example, a Garen Q that is looking to just rush you down, or maybe a Poppy W that gives her a little bit of a movement speed buff moving towards you. Alright, and that will wrap up tip number 1. Alright, and for tip number 2, I want to talk a little bit about itemization and rune setup. Now, the only thing I would change here is I would probably do the hunter that gives you out of combat movement speed to help with the roams and the rotations that you are doing on Quinn. But I want to talk about something that I think is extremely important to get a good understanding of Quinn and what her identity is, and that is split pushing. There are 2 extremely strong split pushing items that you are going to want to go down one path or the other. The most popular is Blade of the Rune King, where you're able to get that extra slow and be good with shredding tanks. But there's also another route of doing this Sanguine Blade. Now, I recommend Sanguine Blade in matchups that you're feeling a little bit more comfortable in, and that you do not need the extra defensive of the slow and speed up from the Blade of the Rune King. Sanguine Blade can be a great way to get a bit of early lethality and a bit of lifesteal, a decent amount of attack damage, and really allow you to win those 1v1s with the additional attack speed that you get when you are playing Quinn. Also, other itemizations you want to look into, you really want to look at it as a flexible type of champion. Quinn is extremely flexible with her item build. When she's extremely far ahead and you feel like you can close it before people get 3 items, things like lethality can work at a decent level if you're going things like Yomu's or a dusk blade. The only thing is that is quite a big risk if you are going very heavily into lethality, as you will fall off quite quickly. So a good overall catch-all build would be something like a Bork into a traditional crit build of a couple attack speed items with the infinity edge that allows you to have a high amount of consistent damage. If you're against a lot of AD champions and you are getting people are able to get on top of you rather quickly, things like Ninja Tabi can be quite effective. So if you are even or behind, try and build a little bit more defensive, like build a Phantom Dancer before you would build a Rapid Fire or Static Shiv, and then build Ninja Tabis before you would build something like a Berserker's Greaves to kind of minimize the losses and try to be as effective as possible in the split push when you are playing Quinn. Now, I am pretty dead set on Press the Attack being the most optimal rune for Quinn, but there are a lot of things you can do to work around it. I think there are other runes that can work on Quinn, but might not be as good as Press the Attack. Now, a rune that I think is extremely important, particularly against really heavy HP champions that are going to have a lot bigger health pool than you, and that is Cut Down. As Quinn has one of the lowest base HPs in the game, I think you need to really take advantage of this. This will provide you with so much extra damage, and then if you are going against a poke champion, something like the Bloodline or Legend Bloodline, where you're able to get a little bit of health, or if you want a little bit more aggression with the attack speed, you really want to adjust your build for what you need in the current map, and do not be one of those people that are just doing the cookie cutter build over and over again. Always look to adapt your build towards the game state. And that will wrap up tip number 2. Alright, and getting into tip number 3, I want to talk about something that only probably the more intermediate or advanced Quinn players are going to understand and be able to utilize quite regularly, and that is the explosion zone on your blinding assault, as it doesn't show you the radius in which it will explode like a lot of skill shots do. Here, how you want to look to take advantage of this is either using a minion or a nearby enemy champion. You are able to get damage on people that are a little bit further back. As you can see, I want you to watch this target dummy's health bar while I'm throwing the Q at this enemy target. So he is taking a bit of extra damage because he is in the splash zone of the Q. Also, you can use things like minions to extend the effective range of your Q by hitting this cannon. I am able to hit a champion that is really close to it. So if this guy is just really insanely good at dodging a lot of your abilities and you're not able to connect with any Qs, looking for nearby targets to spread the damage to him can be quite effective. However, this will be your big cooldown, and it will not give a blind. It gives a blind on the first target, but if you just want to get a little bit of extra poke damage, this is a great way to just get a little bit of AoE damage and to spread it around quite a bit. So again, you can use minions, you can use jungle, you can use other enemy champions to spread your Q damage to other champions, and you will eventually, the more you do this, the more you get used to understanding the splash zone of hitting the other champions around it. And that will wrap up this tip for Quinn. Alright, and getting into the 4th tip for Quinn, I want to go over something that I call turtle busting, and that is when you play lane bully champions like Quinn, you have to develop different strategies in which you are able to really take advantage of people that are hyper passive and look to still get those early and mid game kills and get you rolling down the path of snowballing a bit on Quinn. The first one is rather obvious, and I'm sure that a lot of people know to use it. And when you have something with an extremely fast movement speed, you are actually able to gank your own lane. So ducking into a bush and casting your R and then going in on them is going to be a way to catch them out of position. And what is great about this is when they do not expect you to be coming out with Valor and coming at them at an extremely quick pace, they very rarely will trade back on you if you have a decent amount of strength and they are being a passive player. They will just run away while you get free auto attacks and you continue harassing them out of lane. You can just need to do it out of vision, so you can do it in an alcove, you can do it in a bush, you can do it over here. See how the enemies can't see me, I can't see them, so doing something like this can be an extremely good way where you can gank your own lane on Quinn. A second way to bust out all of these turtle players that are looking to be very passive people against Quinn is by feigning roams. Whenever people see roams, particularly in low elo, a lot of the times they like to follow up because they know they're going to get flamed if they do not. And how you can look to take advantage of this is by making sure you have either a control ward or a sweeper and know you aren't being seen in this bush and going to get countered by the jungler and your enemy laner. You are going to wait in this bush for them to try and match your roam, and then when they get close, you are going to unleash your combo and do a decent amount of damage or try to kill them there. Another way to bust out this turtle is to attack the enemy jungler, attack his important camps, attack his raptors and his red buff, and the jungler and top lane are going to have a lot of discord between each other. They are not going to be happy with each other. They're going to be bitching like, why doesn't this guy have his lane opponent under control? And being a solo laner, you are going to have a lot higher of a level than the enemy jungler because you have access to that solo farm. So make sure to take advantage of your lane boy status in these 3 different ways, and that will wrap up this tip. Alright, and for the final tip, I want to go over maybe an optimal trade pattern is the great way to put it, but I want to go over something that I think is so important that a lot of lower elo Quins do not understand, and that is appropriate passive use. The reason why there's a really big prevalence of crit Quinn players is because Harrier cooldown is reduced by critical strike chance, as well as it being a great way to have consistent damage and not rely fully on being a snowballing champion in the early and mid game. But another way to look at Harrier is you want to take full advantage of how you are able to proc it several times in a quick trade. So if you did not know, when you cast your behind the enemy lines, you are able to get a vulnerable mark. You want to auto Q, auto, E, auto. So you do not want to have a enemy champion that has a vulnerable mark on it and use another ability and double up your vulnerable mark, as you are missing out on a lot of extra damage from Quinn's Harrier. It also reveals the enemy champion for 4 seconds, so it will make sure that even if they go into the bushes, you are able to continue to see them. As you can see right here, when they are marked, you are able to see them. So this helps a lot with people that try and use the bush to their advantage. So again, you want to start off combos. If you are post 6, you want to go at about right here, auto Q, auto E, auto. If you are just looking for an aggressive trade and you do not want to save your abilities for defensive cooldowns and you feel like you can burst them extremely quickly, this is the way to play it out to maximize your damage. The number one key point is to make sure you're taking advantage of every single time you're able to proc the vulnerable, and you should be able to win most trades by following this pattern. That will be my final tip, guys. If you have any questions, you can hit me up in the comments down below, and as always, take it easy.